justice, righteousness, and harmonious balance, who comes to us in the form of the light of vitality, giving us the strength and the endurance to live and act upon that which we know to be true. Homage to you, the one who shines in and through us as a beacon of light for those who are blind to the facts of their place, their position, and their responsibility in the divine scheme of things. May we be Ma'akiru, true of thought, word, and deed, to our highest realities. And in the moments of crisis and the dark nights of the soul, when it appears that everyone and everything else has let us down, so it is, and so shall it be. Amen. Ma'akiru, 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 Ma'akiru. MC, dua. Beyond the way.
Beyond the way.
Heat it up in here, right?
Yeah.
All right. See if we can start some trouble today. See if I can get some people upset again. But Sanjetti and Kaik are not here. I wanted to congratulate them because y'all know they got married, right? Or married them, right? Yeah. That's another plus for community building and nation building. And we're racking them up. I think mental, like y'all was my first wedding that I did, right? Yeah. Then I think I did Majudi Roz and Sejmedi's rededication ceremony after that. And after that was Saniket and Nini. Then after that was Randy and Anencia, and now we have Kaik and Sanjetti. Just so y'all know, I don't hire myself out to the community. I only do ceremonies for people that I can vouch for their character. Because my spirituality, my connection, and my karma is connected to the people that I serve. And like I said, you can't hire me to give people names and things like that. This is part of nation building. Some things just have to be sacred. Certain things have to be set apart. Certain things just have to be special if they're going to have any type of powerful and profound effect upon the psyche of the people. That's how you build power over generations. Okay? And once again, it's a step towards nation building. I think sometimes we have to temper our expectations when we talk about nation building. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like you can never do enough to impress people, right? You do some things and they be like, so, and what else? What have you done for me lately? When in reality, when we have things like weddings and things like this, this is real people. This is real life. Real people doing real things. In order for you to go on and start getting the land and the buildings, we have to have sacred relationships and interrelationships. And one of the qualifiers is you got to survive getting on each other's nerves. It's easy to see some things you don't like and you run. Like, that's not nation building. Like, you're gonna see the best and the worst out of all the people that you claim is gonna be your brothers and sisters. So what happens is we oftentimes bring a lot of baggage from our biological family into the spiritual family, and we project perfection on the spiritual family, not realizing that you, as well as everybody else in the spiritual family, has baggage, and sometimes that stuff leak out, and sometimes we're triggered. And sometimes that taints the image of nation building. But the point is, there's going to be no parade at the end of this. You don't get no pats on the back for doing the right thing. So part of the rites of passage as a community, you got to have birthing ceremonies. You have to have wedding ceremonies. You have to have rites of passage ceremonies. You have to have priesthood ceremonies. You have to have death ceremonies. So it takes a whole cycle or generation before this thing can be considered a true community. If not, it's just a glorified study group. And that's what's going on in our community now. We don't even have study groups no more. Everyone's on their individual path. But what I'm saying about this thing that we're part of is sometimes, I'll say most times, it's a thankless job. So, okay, you got the wedding ceremony and what? The work continues. We had a hot retreat and you rock out for a week again. The work continues. So we have to embrace that. and put that in proper context. So just because things seem boring sometimes, it doesn't mean the work ain't being done. That's all part of the work. And that's something that I have to resolve myself with also. Sometimes people like myself, we're put in this position where a lot of times the community think our pleasure is supposed to be teaching and speaking to you all. That we're supposed to get some type of personal pleasure out of that. You know, I'm not talking to y'all directly, I'm talking about the community in general. So some people project things on the leadership like you should love speaking and waking your people up. And it's a thankless job. It's a job that doesn't bring any pleasure. To the point I've indulged myself. I reactivated my ministry in music. Y'all know I put out some CDs and stuff like that. That brings me pleasure. Because it's a hard sell when you get in front of people that try to teach them things that they said they wanted to learn. You break it down, you break the official position down on the legacy and the teachers, and they still do something else. Like, that ain't no fun. And so my music is not even a guilty pleasure, because even the music that I make is still for you all. It's still for the enlightenment of the people. So sometimes I take a break from speaking, because when I get up here, I want to say relevant things. I want to say provocative things. So we have to reconcile ourselves with being controversial and being safe. Everything is very different in the atmosphere in society right now. You barely could say anything. And people are editing you and things like that. Remember when I spoke about the jab several weeks ago, somebody pretty much told me to stay in my place and just speak the spiritual stuff and leave that other stuff to the doctors. So nobody wants to ruffle any feathers, but the real truth comes in the discomfort. If you're too comfortable, you'll probably stop learning at that point. The real truth and the experience of truth comes with the discomfort. So y'all see the controversy with Dave Chappelle, right? And that's what I'm talking about. So it's like, this is my therapy out loud. So it's making me reconsider my whole position on a whole lot of things. Like, okay, what is my real purpose up here? So you just want me to say the things you want me to say. So I can't move the dial. So here he is, he's saying something, he's very profound in what he's saying. He made jokes about the black community his whole career, right? Talk about our drug addictions and we laughed because a joke is a joke, and if it's true, it's true. He remember the joke about the black Ku Klux Klan, remember? So we laughed at the white folks laughed, but this one community, you make a joke about them, they were trying to sit you down. So the same thing with the so-called jabbing things. So I spoke the last two communions, I spoke about that, and I'm gonna close my thoughts on it because it bothers me about the reaction. I'm tired of I'm disappointed and almost disgusted in our community. I'm tired of the flip-flopping. I'm a person that prides myself on discipline and consistency. And check it out, discipline and consistency doesn't mean perfection. A lot of people do that. Oh, I thought you were supposed to. Yeah, I'm supposed to. And for the most part, 8 or 9 out of 10 times I'm on it. So don't think discipline and consistency means perfection. But across the line, we got to be more than 80% on point all the time, or we're wasting our time. We're just philosophizing. So I'm tired of the back and forth. So we've been watching people, our own people, flip-flop on everything that was sacred to us. That's why I said we're pulling back as a community. We're going to do this one last cycle, initiating people into our community, and we're going to work on building our relationships and our interrelationships, because clearly everybody else ain't into nation building anymore. Right. It's become Western culture has become the cult of the individual. So now everybody's word is law. So if everything is just what it is that you feel to say at the time, then we can never agree to do anything. Because a lot of times you may agree with the truth, and a lot of times the truth may make you uncomfortable. But if you're really about the truth, you're going to do it anyway. But now we go, oh, you can't always see it that way. That's why, for my own personal truth, I make my music. When I stand up here as the leader and the speaker to you, I got to get into your mind and your psyche and figure out what's going on with you and figure out why y'all do what y'all do and try to craft a message to maybe this communion be the one that reach you. But when it comes to art, remember, comedy is an art. Dave Chappelle is not a political leader, so it doesn't make sense to be trying to hold him to the flame of any of his views. He's an artist, he's a comedian. His job is to make you laugh, make light about things, make you think. So as an artist in my music, I can have more honest expression. So when you're listening to my music now, you got to get into my head. Why did he make that song? Why did he say that? I wonder what he was thinking when he made the vibe of this song. So we're talking about honest expression, not political correctness. So over the course of the past 30 years, we've seen our own people turn our back on history. Remember, it was the thing to say, we come from Africa. And we know everybody on the continent, all tribes or nations on the continent is not directly genetically related to us. Well, maybe they are. But overall, all this time we always said those were our ancestors. Didn't Imam Makeda say that sometimes? You could honor your direct ancestors and you could just acknowledge ancestry, period. And we've been doing that with African history. Whether it's East Africa, West Africa, South Africa, we be like, that is our ancestors. But somehow in the past 5 years, that's no longer the thing to do. Now cats are saying, I'm from over here. And for those of us that's sticking to our story about our ancestry to the continent, now people want to pick and choose like, well, you ain't Egyptian, that ain't your ancestors. And then what do? They want to pick some obscure places in Africa and be like, your ancestors actually come from here. And then it's hard to find anything great coming from that area. Not to say that those people aren't great, but it becomes harder and harder to find some things that stand out. And when you look at the ancient Kemetic ancestors, they never directed themselves to a people. They directed their sources to the divine, to the Neteru. And the reasons they did great things because they believed they came from divine origins, not monkeys and not apes or whatever they want to say. So it becomes almost like violence to the psyche of an individual to say, your ancestry, your people ain't did nothing significant. Get used to your mediocrity. That's what they're saying. Do your ancestry. I'm gonna trust the science. I don't care what the ancestors think. Just because the ancestors did that, I ain't gotta believe that. I'm gonna trust the science. You heard that before, trust the science. Yeah. Isn't that the phrase, trust the science? Yeah. So we pick up our spirituality. Everybody in this place, everybody got shrines and altars at their home? Do you feel empowered about having your shrine and altar? Was there a period when you felt uncomfortable about that? You can be honest. Okay. So now what does that even mean? So we're feeling powerful about our shrines and our altars. The shrine is Kerak. Can y'all say that? Kerak. The altar is Kaut. So we have these things set up, but what we're finding out is a lot of people, that's just kind of like a backdrop in their life. You see my shrine and my altar in my house, they don't even do nothing and it looks good and stuff. And they did it as a response or reaction just to say that they're not Christian, just to say that they're not Jew, just to say that they're not an Israelite, just to say they're not a Moor. So I'm doing this just to make you uncomfortable because I'm getting you back because I was made to feel uncomfortable about my culture. Then some people do it just to stick it to the white man. Oh, I reclaim my African culture back. And now cats are saying, well, that's spoogism too. Just because the ancestors did it don't mean I got it, but I'm gonna trust the science. Now the new thing amongst black people is I'm gonna trust the science. Health. I was listening to the sister speak about her health condition, about not trusting the doctors. Isn't that the conversation coming up in being conscious? Don't be trusting them doctors. That Western medicine is something different than the natural medicine of our ancestors. Our ancestors were in tune with the earth, the sun, moon, and stars, and they did everything on the sacred cycle. And when we look at the Western medicine, they don't do any of that. All we have is a litany of side effects. So yeah, the drug you give me may be making me feel good for 5 minutes, but I got 20 other things wrong. And it makes you start thinking like, man, maybe I was better off just suffering with the thing because they done gave me 20 more things. Now, check it out. So now that crisis is happening in the world, it was cool to be African. It was cool to have your history. It was cool to do the health thing until a crisis hit the world. Now they're telling you that natural health stuff is pseudo. You need to stick with the science. The world is getting crazy. You might lose your job and you need some type of guidance through the whole situation. You be like, I need to get a reading. I need to speak to the priest. I need to go to my altar. And they be like, that's spooky. You don't go to no altar, no priest. You need to just wait to see what the scientists have to say. Isn't that what's going on? The health, you be like, well, I'm going to get my health together. I ain't worried so much about that virus. They be like, yo, that's pseudo. You need to let the science, when they tell me stick to the mod stuff, let the scientists figure that out. You see this thing, trust the science. Trust the science. Trust the science. It's entrainment. But just for me to say, I don't have a problem with science, but who is science under the jurisdiction of? Our oppressor. So when you say trust the science, that's flags to me. So when you say trust the science, I think of what science and technology has given us. Remember, our tradition is based on nature, natural principles. Y'all get it, right? So when you say trust the science, and when I say what has science done for us, and once again, I'm not speaking against science. We all in now. We got heat, air conditioning, light, technology, the phone. We using all of that. I'm not telling you not to do it. It's too late. We in. But let's look at it for what it is. So now, when we say let's go outside and look at the sun and take off our shoes and ground, maybe this Negro crazy. Not realizing that this is a convenience. These lights is a convenience. Do y'all think this light is good for us or harmful in the long run?
Harmful.
Harmful. This is low frequency electromagnetic lights. This affects you negatively in the long run. But that's science and technology. It gave us that. So it's got us scowling at natural light. And matter of fact, how many people are outside for more than 2 hours a day? Okay, that's good. Most people are not. You need at least 2 hours of natural sunlight in order for your body to do what it's meant to do. But who's inside more than 2 hours a day? That's the results of science and technology. So they say, no, you don't got to stay outside. You could be inside of this warm building, inside of this cool building. You don't got to rely on the window light. We got these lights, which is harming you in the long run. But I say air conditioning, heating and air conditioning. They say close the windows. You can't let the warm air out. And now we all breathing in each other's carbon dioxide. Is that healthier or harmful in the long run?
Harmful.
What about air conditioning? There's no such thing as air. Well, that's conditioned air, cool air. What's that chemical that they use in the air conditioning to make the air cool? Is that good for you in the long run? Yeah. So we're sacrificing our principle for short-term immediate gratification. So is it a wonder why the cancer level grow as you get older? Could it be all of these things are making you susceptible to that new virus 19 thing? Science, for what I know, it took them 10 years to make all the vaccines we already take. Now they came up with this new one in 9 months. So we talking this fast food thing, this so-called convenient thing again. So is that, I guess we about to find out in the next few years if it was good or bad in the long run. And once again, I'm not judging anyone who made these decisions because this was my fear. This is all leaders' fear that the situation like this thing was gonna come and we wasn't gonna be ready. And we're not ready. So it could go anyway at this point. We're not ready. We were supposed to be individually more successfully and collectively more successfully. We were supposed to have more land. We were supposed to have more property. We were supposed to have acres and acres. So when somebody said, get this jab or you fired, you be like, y'all, you know, you have that. My people got acres. They're gonna make sure I got some food to eat. My people got some property over here. We're gonna work some things out. But we're not there. I don't know about y'all, but I came up in this community. I was listening to people like Queen Afua and Dr. Africa, Dr. Sebi, and everything they said made sense to me. Everything that they said continues to make sense to me. But now we got people in our community trying to dishonor their traditions. I'll say this much, I say it still makes sense. Some people are trying to, my thing is like, you can make a contribution to our teaching in our community without disparaging the reputations of our elders, right? That's possible, right? So right now I'm questioning, are people even decent at this point? So what I would say about our Queen of Fools, our Dr. Africans, our Dr. Sebis, our Dr. Gauses, they were unconventional. Yeah, I heard that. They were unconventional. Unconventional doesn't mean wrong. Unconventional was your grandmama and your mama. Let me clarify that. Unconventional was your mama and your grandmother. Let me clarify it again. In 2021, the idea of a mama and a grandmother is not the same as it was for people 40 and over. People 40 and over, their ancestry, their people, their lineage is coming from the cusp of coming from down south. It was closer to certain things that got passed through slavery, certain traditions that stayed in the family that got passed on. So the longer we're up here in the West, we lose that connection. There was a song back in the 80s called, it was by a brother named Greg Tate from Plainfield. It's called Babies Are Having Babies. Y'all remember that? So, it's a classic. Look it up. Babies Are Having Babies. It was a ballad, actually. So, the mothers are getting younger, so it's less and less valuable information being passed on from one generation to the next. So, can you open that up? Because people like got their eyes closed, can't. So mama and grandmama mean something different. So back in certain people's days, their grandmama had them taking certain liniments and ointments that smelled terrible, that tasted nasty. You're like, oh, I hate this stuff. Cod liver oil, all type of stuff. It was that Kwame Brown called that my mama's cooking. It was juju. Mama's cooking was juju. And a lot of us had that. So now as we got older, we hated the nasty tasting stuff. So we got civilized. We began to trust the science. We got educated, went to college and school, got away from it. And as some of us got older, we started experiencing ailments that we was going to the doctor for that wasn't working. Because usually when that happens, before you see a natural person, you done tried all the conventional stuff, then you come back and be like, your grandma might not be living. Some told you, let me try grandma's liniment. Let me try that cod liver oil. Then bam, the cod liver oil works. That's unconventional. That's unscientific, but it works. Who cares about the science of it if it worked, right? So what's more important, scientific explanation or efficacy? Yeah. Yeah, you want it to work. You care about it working, not the explanation. We've trained our ears to fancy scientific explanations that go over our head. So they be like, trust the science. So you listen to the doctor or the scientist and they saying some stuff that's going over your head. You be like, I don't know what he's talking about, but since I don't understand, he must know what he's talking about. That's some new stuff in our community. The FDA is still acting like it's an anomaly why people do natural herbs and vitamins and supplements. What do they say? Oh, it's unproven. But yet they need the same herbs to create the pharmaceuticals. So they know that it works. Remember the word pharmacy comes from a Greek word meaning what? It means magic plants, magical plants. It's connected to witchcraft. It's connected to sorcery. It's connected to a Greek goddess, so-called goddess called Hecate. So this is what we're into now is coming down to the battle of the juju doctors. So the pharmaceutical is the new juju doctor. And the government is now, they're pushing compulsion. They be like, you're gonna go to our juju doctor, or you ain't gonna be able to eat. So I'm concerned with this effort to disprove natural health. No one has any more faith in natural immunity. They acting like that's pseudo now. The same doctors that taught us about that in school, now all of a sudden it's not relevant. Natural immunity. They're trying to disprove vitamin supplements. They're trying to disprove Dr. Sebi's protocols and Queen Afua's protocols. Now that we know in 2021 that both of those individuals have healed hundreds and thousands of people from cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, tumors, and a whole litany of stuff, right? Y'all heard of these stories, right? From their protocols. Now people are saying, but what's the scientific data, right? What's the scientific data? And fair enough, I'll be like, I don't know. Our community never operated on scientific data like that. In our community, it either works or it don't work. So you got a friend or a friend of a friend that it works, you do your basic research, you're like, hey, I'm gonna try it. Because when it deals with the natural herbs, it's either gonna work or it's not. It's traditionally not known to be harming people. I bet you if you study within a decade period of time, you can't find not 100 people that died from it taking anything natural. But 52,000 people die from over-the-counter medicine every year. Those are war numbers, and like whole townships levels worth of people are dying just from over-the-counter stuff. Let's not get into the prescription stuff. So that could add a whole 100,000 over that. And they trying to get you scared. 3,000 people died of COVID this week. You like, well, how many people died from the over-counter stuff? So this research or the scientific never mattered till it mattered. Let me approach that again. Dr. Sebi's negative attention didn't come because he was healing people from natural stuff. Oh, I'll just say Dr. Sebi's poor reputation didn't come because he was harming people. He wasn't scamming people for money. He got that reputation because he was healing people. You know what brought him the negative attention? Anybody guess? What brought him the negative attention?
Cure for AIDS.
Cure for AIDS?
We started healing people in Africa.
He said the cure for AIDS, and the other brother said when he started curing people in Africa, he said, all right, no, it wasn't that. His misstep was allowing people to call him doctor. That's what brought him the negative press. They didn't care about none of that healing stuff, but because the community affectionately gave him the title doctor, he was their brother Sebi before, he was Al before. When they gave him that doctor, that's a legal term that's owned by the medical association, so they were like, okay, now who's this dude thinking he's a doctor? You ain't been initiated in our school. This is a problem. That's what brought him up in there in the courts, not because he was healing. So then they wanted the scientific data. And he had people come up there and prove themselves, but it wasn't scientific. So the science will call that anecdotal. Y'all understand? Anecdotal means, yeah, you got some effects, but since you didn't document it according to what we call the scientific process, it's not real science. So that's anecdotal. Pretty much that's like saying, that's cute, but it's still not scientific. So we done got ourselves in the point, oh, it's gotta be scientific, it's gotta be scientific. Just like you hear of this thing called the placebo effect. Do you know the placebo effect works 70% of the time on them drugs that they give when they do a drug trial? They have to measure it against the placebo effect, and 70% of the time, in most cases, the placebo effect works anyway. That means that's your subconscious connection between your mind and your body. So they be discarding that, like, what's that? So what happened is, in our tradition, Africans are masters of that placebo effect. So when you got your altar, that's part of the placebo effect. When you wearing your colors, that's part of the placebo effect. When you chanting and dancing and wearing a mask, that's all part of the placebo effect. 71% of the healing is in the placebo effect. And then you got another some odd percent in the herbs and the chemical makeup of the herbs. Then the other percent comes from you managing your stress levels. So where's the science, they say? in general. So if you come to the doctor saying you got, well, Queen of Four, and you got a big knot on your neck, or you got a fibroid tumor, and you bleeding profusely for 14 days at a time, or you got diabetes, now they got the diabetes test, you can prick your finger and you can test your own blood sugar, right? Now they got machines where you can take at home, you can check your own blood pressure, right? So then you get on this protocol, and by the time you finish the protocol, that lump ain't there no more. By the time you finish that protocol, your menstrual cycle is normal again. By the time you finish that protocol, you got normal blood sugar levels. By the time you finish that protocol, you got healthy blood pressure. Now, I'm saying this, when you're going through pain and suffering, it's counterintuitive to be seeking scientific data. You be like, Negro, all I know is by the time I finished that protocol, my lump was gone out my neck. I don't gotta go to the doctor to see, is the lump really gone, doctor? Like, you know it's gone. The bleeding profusely is no longer there. Your blood pressure is you don't need to go. So what happens, a lot of people don't go back to the doctor because they have the equipment in their own homes to test their own levels. So that's why it appears to be lacking evidence. And what happens is people be like, yo, Dr. Sebi or the Queen of Four, I took that black seed oil and I ain't never had to go to the doctor ever since. It's still working. That's how things work in the cultural community. So once again, don't get so into this conventional thing that you turn your back against things that's unconventional yet effective. So once again, I'm not against Western medicine. But to say that the natural principles that we live by as pseudo is disrespectful. So I'm always going to stand on that. I'm always going to remind you that our position is always natural first. So to call it pseudo and yet you're forcing, because that's what they're doing, they're forcing this vaccination situation. The same administration that said that they wasn't going to force people are now forcing it. And check it out. So now, not only are they forcing the vaccination and threatening your job if you don't do it, now they got not one, not two, not three, but 4 booster shots now. So that's 5 shots. So now I'm pleading you to let your intuition tell you something is wrong. So remember, the original vaccination is supposed to introduce an unactive form of the virus into your body so your body's own immune system could create antibodies, right? That's what y'all understand the vaccination to do, right? So why you gotta take 4 boosters after that? That means your immunity's been compromised. That means it didn't work, so that means you was in bad shape after that shot that they did. Take a booster and your immune system. Why does it need help? The vax was supposed to be to help. Now the second booster, just take that again to be safe. 3rd booster, God damn it, you like 3rd, you're like, yeah, just to really be sure. Now 4? So at this rate, you're gonna be taking 1 every month. And remember, it hasn't been proven to stop the spreading of the disease. That's the original definition, part of the original definition of a vaccine. It's supposed to stop the spread of the vaccine. You done got this thing in your body, and now you're safe. Your people are safe. Now they're telling us this thing, you still gotta wear the mask and stuff. So what is it that and then they don't want to disclose their ingredients. All types, but yet they said the natural thing is pseudo. I would say that their stuff don't work no more or less than the natural stuff, so why can't I do the natural stuff if your stuff ain't working anyway? It's the battle of the juju doctors. The money, they paid for all the shots already. They like, Negroes, y'all gonna get these shots. We paid for this. That's what it's all coming down to, right? And it's messed up. And let's not forget, this is all experimental. I don't want to make y'all feel bad, but y'all a smart crowd. So how do you maintain and stimulate your immunity? Just freestyle. Give me 2 things that you can do to maintain and stimulate your immunity. Sunlight, vitamin D. Drink water. Sleep.
Exercise.
Irish moss. All right, so what y'all said, we're going into the category of primarily nutrition, because you get nutrition from the sun. Actually, the sun gives the plants and stuff that you eat the nutrition. It's the primary source. So primarily through nutrition. And what's the second most important thing to stimulate and activate your immune system? Okay, yeah, because with three things now. Exercise.
Prayer.
Huh?
Prayer.
Prayer. That would go, all right, we're gonna bring it all together. So, she said exercise, prayer, we're gonna call it managing stress level. Exercise does that, right? Prayer does that. So if that's the case, why isn't there a national incentive to improve the dietary profile of America?
There's no money in it.
There's no money. It actually is money, but for some reason, that's why I'm led to believe it's something else. Because the supermarkets will be selling out. Or would they? Is there even real food in the supermarket? The real food is on the periphery. So once again, thanks to science and technology, we're eating junk food. And the junk food is cheaper than real food. You like apples, $5. And an apple fruit cake is $2. So managing stress, so where's the meditation imperative on managing the stress levels? Yet you watch every day, they're telling you more and more people dying, or you better get this thing or you're gonna lose your job. That's not helping managing stress levels, right? It's your choice, but you better. Like that's what, like, huh? Say that again. It's your choice, but you better. When you're messing with people's food, that ain't a choice. When you can't feed your own family if you don't do this, this is not a choice. They said they're gonna make it harder for you if you don't. I'm not gonna stay on that, but what you're hearing is they're saying it's too hard to switch up your diet and all that meditation and exercise and stuff. Don't do that. Just get the jab. The jab is easier. And it's like, just get the 5 jabs. You're like, hold up. The jab, it went from 1 jab to 5. And most people are apprehensive about getting 1 jab, and now you got to get 5. So they're trying to absolve you of your responsibility, your self-responsibility. I was never counting on them to figure it out. As a healer, I'm like, I got it. I'm going to confer with the other healers. We'll be all right. No, you're like, nah. They were like, nah, pump that. The government wants to be your daddy. Eat the food we tell you. Continue eating the junk, just get the jab. Continue, just get the jab so we can get back to the normal unhealthy decisions you was making before the jab. That's what they're selling us on. So my point is not to go against science, it's just a reconsideration of unconventionality. Y'all hear that? The reconsideration of what's unconventional, because they done made people like us the bad guys and the bad girl, because we're not going along with that narrative. So I want to ask y'all about George Washington Carver. Y'all know who that is?
Who?
What do y'all know of George Washington Carver? Who? Who? Oh, what'd you say?
Peanuts.
The Peanuts is associated with George Washington Carver. Anybody else? What else you know about him? Huh?
He was an herbalist.
He was an herbalist, a botanist. He was a chemist. He was an inventor. He invented over 300 inventions just off of the peanut, the soybean, and the sweet potato. He was a genius. He was raised in slavery. He didn't initially have a last name. He was one of them cats that he officially got the slave master's last name. His name wasn't Carver. He was going around saying, I'm George's Carver. And you're like, Negro, don't call yourself George's. You're George Carver. You know, so he was in that time when that's when we officially took on our slave master's name. When at that point they were still saying, I belong to this person. Did y'all know at 11 years old, Carver, his master, castrated him at 11 years old?
So,
if you ever heard his voice recordings of him, he has a very high voice. And to the point where at that time people thought he was bisexual. But that's neither here nor there. George Washington Carver, once again, he was a scientist, a chemist, a botanist, inventor, very religious and spiritual person. He was a Christian, but he never associated himself with the church. Where am I going with this? He was a mystic, but yet a scientist, which made him unconventional. He said, this is his words, he said, nature is full of broadcasting stations, broadcasting messages all the time. That doesn't sound like a Christian. The Christian thing was his cover story. Because he came from a time where they wasn't even letting you in churches, because the white folks had the church. He said he learned to pray from a white boy that was going to Sunday school. And the white boy told him what prayer was, so he learned how to pray on his own. That was his experience with Christianity. He said nature is full of broadcasting stations, broadcasting messages all the time. That sounds like a priest. That sounds like many were the beings that came forth from my mouth. You remember that text, the Kemetic text? So existence came into existence when I came into existence. So you got the creator saying existence, nature, what you call nature is divine intelligence. So fast forward to coming out of slavery, George Washington Carver says nature is full of broadcasting stations communicating messages all the time. George Washington Carver got up 4 a.m. every morning and went out into the woods to commune with nature. He said to talk to the plants. That was his skill. He talked to the plant. He said, I don't hear voices, I just have to get silent. Who else gets up 4 o'clock in the morning, approximately? Y'all do. You know, y'all supposed to be doing dua. That's about 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Or priests get up in the morning and they go to what you call the Jesiru, the Holy of Holies in the temple. So in Kemet they had the temples, but a lot of the pylons had plants and vegetation painted on the pylons, and that was the principle of correspondence. If you know alchemy, it's a principle of correspondence. So that harkens to a time when Kemet in that area was lush vegetation. So it was turned it into a desert at that time. So in respect to that, they painted plants on the building. So they was metaphysically in nature when they went to the holies of holies, to commune with the divine. So in West Africa, the Babalaos and the priests get up wee early hours in the morning, and the shamans and things like that, they go out into nature too. So here you got a brother coming right off the heels of slavery, going out 4 o'clock in the morning to do the same thing. You see, this stuff gets passed genetically. Everyone doesn't always have to teach you this stuff. He don't know why he did it. He just did it and it worked. What did he say? He said, how do you know this stuff about the plants? And he says, I love them. So therefore they release their secrets to me. That's deep. That ain't no Christian talk. That's the African spirituality right there. He said, I love them. So in return, they release their secrets to me. That's something very powerful that we can learn a lesson from. He used to always wear a flower on his lapel, right over the heart area. Remember, our consciousness sits in our heart according to our tradition. So the heart is beating out electromagnetic frequencies in the room at any given time. And he puts a flower on it. So metaphysically, esoterically, energetically, there's exchange going on. He's called it talking, but it's not talking, it's exchange of energy. So out of that process, he comes out of it knowing and not able to explain that process, which makes him unconventional because he was a scientist. He knew the scientific process, but yet he had this unconventional way of knowing what it is that he knows. So we can learn through this process of love. He said, I love them, so therefore they release their secrets to me. This, what we can learn is men and women. Women want to be loved unconditionally so they can release their cooperation to a man. Kempress told me I was supposed to say submit so they could submit to a man. Cooperation is a nicer word, right? Or appropriate word. So men want to be loved unconditionally so they could release their vulnerability to a woman. Because men are going around acting like they don't care about women. So learning from George Washington Carver that this power of love has the power to make, almost like a supernatural power to make someone release themselves to you. So his love of plants made these plants. The plants are the ancestors of the earth. So his love for the plants made the plants release cosmic information to him that was unknown to the white folks at that time. So we're supposed to love the legacy of our ancestors the way he loved those plants, and therefore the spirit of the legacy, which is divine, then releases uncommon information to you. I hear that. Love the legacy, love the teachings of your ancestors so it can release, so the creator and the ancestors can release to you uncommon information. That uncommon information makes you unconventional. So George Washington Carver said this. He said, we have to, in order to approach the infinite, we have to loose ourselves from the finite and give ourselves to the infinite. Y'all heard that? In order to approach the infinite, we have to lose ourselves from the finite to release ourselves from, that ain't Christian talk. That's serious mysticism. So now the scientists he was being ridiculed at his time. So here we are, all these years later, oh, George Washington Carver, the peanut and all this thing, we looking at him with honor. He was being ridiculed in his time. Isn't that interesting how that works out? You're ridiculed in your time, but later on they be like, actually, he got it right. So at that time in 1924, Times magazine says, they were ridiculing him and said, scientists do not rely on inspiration. Because that was unconventional. Remember, they have the scientific process, so they're supposed to do stuff a certain way to say it's this way because of this. He was saying, the plants told me directly. So they were seeing him as an embarrassment. They said he's on the verge of becoming an embarrassment to the black race because of his views. Do y'all think he changed? No. So he went on to create over 300 inventions, which one of the inventions that came from his ideas about the peanut was peanut butter. He had over 300 inventions, so he created certain dyes. He changed the textile industry to be able to stop Americans from having to import textiles from overseas and things like that. So here we are, we're honoring him now. So the point in all of this is we can't discount unconventionality. That was his contribution. Just like Dr. Sebi has his contribution, Queen Afua has a contribution, Dr. Goss has his contributions, and then you have people like myself and Mental, we're from that same cloth. So we have respect for science like everybody else, but we never discount the conversation with the divine in that. That's the difference. And I want to say that it's normal for naturopaths to be right even if it goes against contemporary science. It oftentimes worked that way. That's what we just proven that with George Washington Carver. He was ridiculed at his time just to figure out that he got it right later on down the line. So I'm gonna bring it home like this. I was speaking with my brother about my feelings about our double-mindedness when it comes to our ideas about health. And what he said to me, he said, tea leaves. I'm like, what are you talking about? He got all George Washington Carver on me, tea leaves. I was like, what? He said, tea leaves. He said, tea leaf, or before a tea leaf become a tea leaf, it's just a leaf, right? It means it's organic. What we're calling a tea leaf isn't useful to us until we made a tea from it. So, even that cold iced tea that you had, it has to be brewed. So that tea has to be put under fire to release its alkaloids and its healing potential. That's what makes it a tea. And the other purpose of tea, the Asians use it, dry tea leaves, and they use it as a form of divination. Y'all heard of tea leaf divination? And all indigenous peoples read patterns to determine the will of the divine. So here we go. So here you have green leaf, mint, whatever tea. It is organic, but it's quite useless to you until you put it under that fire. So you need this organic thing, they expose it to two other organic things, which is water and fire, in order for it to release its alkaloids and healing potential. And then what is the instructions tell you after that? It said, let it steep for 5 minutes and then drink. So you can't just drink it right away. You gotta let it sit, because there's an alchemy going on. There's a transmutation going on. And then you can drink it and benefit from the healing quality. So that tea is stronger than the natural herb. And I said, so he said, we're the tea leaf. So a human being is pretty much useless until you've been put under pressure. So the pressure is the stress. So So we had to put the T in water, under fire, two organic things. So metaphysically, water represents emotion. Fire represents stress and pressure. So there's some things that gotta rile your emotions. And there's gotta be a certain amount of pressure and stress that you're gonna have to endure as a human being. So before the pressure and the stress, all you got is your beliefs. You're quite useless as a human being to be put under stress and pressure. This pressure and this stress is what's going to transform your beliefs into knowing. Remember, before the pressure, you just got belief. You don't know if it's true or not. You got to go through something where all you got is your belief to carry. Remember, I said knowing, not knowledge. Knowledge is static in books. It's in your notes or lectures and stuff. We talk about knowing. Knowing is a fluid state. Knowing is a fluid state, meaning that there has to be a point in your evolution where you flow through uncertainty with intuitive certainty. Repeat that. It has to be a point in your evolution where you flow through uncertainty with an intuitive certainty. When you flow through uncertainty with an intuitive certainty, on the surface you look what? Unconventional. So now, ATR, African traditional religion, we call Kemmunion. We're in a certain pocket in life, and that pocket is unconventionality. We specialize in unconventionality in the ATR. Even our concepts of theology is untraditional, so we're in a society where they're into monotheism. So we talk about Netru, we talk about Orisha and ancestors, and they be like, you're a polytheist. So we're unconventional, yet our stuff works for us just as good or better than their stuff. So it's unconventional. It doesn't mean you're wrong. Different approach. Our dress, we got a different swim. We're not wearing the Louis Vuitton and what else they wearing today? Like I can't keep up. Louis Vuitton, what else? Michael Kors and stuff. We got a different swagger. They be like, that's unconventional. Well, they say it's whack, but the nice word is unconventional. In our culture, the foods we eat, how we raise our children, we call holistic. They call that unconventional. So the message is, being unconventional doesn't make you the enemy. Got it? All right, I ain't doing that, so let's stand up and close out. Left foot forward into the 90-degree position. Say shimmy and matep. Brothers right over left, sisters left over right. The and new Uncle Jocelyn. Open up. Give energy around the room. The heavens, bring it into your chest. Retract your foot. On the count of 3, stomp out with your right foot to ground the energy. Wa, salute, men. All right.
Dua Netta to all of you who joined us on YouTube and Facebook Live. We will be back here for our next regularly scheduled communion in 2 weeks on Sunday, November 14th. We appreciate the reciprocity that you send to us in the form of your donations, which can be sent by Cash App, $ Temple Avenue, or by PayPal to templeavenue@gmail.com. And until next time, Shamim and Tab.
Yes! Yes!